Sergent's Will is a story about started about earlier this year, and it's run by what I can only assume to be a 20-something guy that must be about done with college and a friend of undetermined age, because I can't tell exactly, I can't pinpoint his demographic, something which is unusual, but I'm on board of. Yeah, that's the mystery. I'm gonna make a quick breakdown slash pick apart slash analysis, etc., of the first chapter, skipping the prologue. The reason I'm skipping the prologue is because, to my point of view, of course, that's perfectly subjective and criticize me by any means. I feel like that's a bit of unnecessary context that we both know will be just talked to us again later on. So I'm gonna spare you the boredom of the prologue and go into what I assume is the stuff everyone wants to read. That's the actual story. This video is gonna be split into sections, and my style of editing will be very simple as I'm not doing it for the spectacle. It's also a written story, so I don't have a lot to show on screen, and while I'd surely love to record some Angry Birds gameplay and put it in the background, I feel like Red throwing himself at green pigs is not exactly the kind of tone you want to achieve a video of this. I'm also very sorry for both my audio quality and for the ambience as a whole. My computer is just not having the greatest time ever this year. Regardless, let's start. First, the story. The story follows what I believe is 4 characters. I'm gonna consider only the 4 that are deliberately made important, as most other are either faceless placeholders or just fillers per se. Background characters, nothing wrong with that, though I feel like there's a lack of main lead. David, John Michael, which I'm gonna be calling Michael, because honestly John sounds too generic, so I'm gonna be calling him Michael. An assassin called Denigrade, and I'll have to make spoilers, sorry I forgot to add the warning, but it also counts on a bomber that passes on De La Cruz. The story follows the safety patrol as David and Michael are waiting for Cruz to arrive at a meeting with a bunch of local gangs, which are referred to as organized crime, which is a pretty technical term, so I'm not exactly sure how to scope out. I assume it means that they are structured like a cartel, but I feel like the specific naming is not exactly justified. Regardless, it's an artistic choice and I value a bit of the view. The story actually starts when David decides to go out getting an AK that was gifted by Michael, apparently. It was hold on from a past operation, though that's again not very important context. What you need to know is that he now has an AK. He goes onto the second floor to spy on the meeting, which is supposedly going on as normal. As this happened, we get a shot of Denigrate, which is a hired assassin mark, as I can only assume by the few scenes and explanations he gets, which also has communications with her boss, which I'm gonna get into later. The boss not yet identified, so I'm gonna have to call him boss, not to confuse with the famous big boss. Anyway, what happens is a fairly simple sequence of Denigrate interfering with David's plans and stopping essentially the operation for a short while before the suicidal bomber decides to execute his thing, as Cruz shows visible distrust towards his fellow new employers. I feel like we can call them that. They're his employers. The chapter is cut fairly short, and I'm gonna get into those complaints later, but that's mostly it. I feel like this was supposed to be a single chapter which covered the whole operation, but it got cut short due to either creative preferences or simply because it was easier to write and to see feedback, which again, questionable decisions, but I'm not one to judge. They don't interfere, and I assume that if you read after it's done, it won't have any of an impact in your reading. Part 2, the character introductions as a whole. The characters again are fairly simple, but I'm gonna focus on the main 2, which I found that need more context, which I got both from the authors themselves And from a bit of my own digging around, which by that I mean I just really, really read over and over every single chapter that could relate to this. Yes, I have no life, and I read those things so you don't have to. So you're welcome. Denigrate is the most mysterious character yet, and while she does have a twist, which was, I can only assume, accidentally spoiled by the authors, I'm gonna refrain myself from telling, and I'm gonna just count the perspective which the average reader is supposed to see. She's an assassin, and her boss, which communicates with her often and in secrecy, has some adversities towards Cruz, which is, well, not really Cruz in this case. Apparently, he has some sort of personal intercase, and her boss, much like Cruz himself, I forgot to mention the detail, apologies, is a torturer which is apparently hired by the organized crime. So, as a fair guess, I assume they have professional differences, or at least are in a competing market of information extractors. I feel like we can call them that to not trigger the YouTube part. Regardless, what happens is a fairly simple of Denigrate getting told to stop David and accidentally fail to protecting the lieutenant, which was her initial job. They assume she's gonna get paid anyways because no one survived, so she can just claim it was an accident, which would be a fairly risky play, but I feel like we'd add to the character a lot to making her kinda manipulative and to show that while she's loyal to the money, she's not loyal to the person which the money comes from. Regardless, Michael is a fairly odd case and a fairly odd addition to this franchise. I feel like there's something odd to him. He's a fairly kind Russian which enlisted in the Soviet battalions, again details I got from the writers, and he does have a particular affinity towards sugar and in specific chocolate as it seems, specific Dolokos. I don't know how to pronounce it, apologies. But Dolokos, I guess a cool reference which I find really clever, and sorry if I'm spoiling it, but Mikhail relates to the name of the Team Fortress 2 Heavy, if I'm not mistaken. Could be others, I believe his family is Misha, but I believe that Mikhail has some ties to him. Dalkos is the name of the bar item in Team Fortress 2 which allows the Heavy to heal himself at a slight disadvantage of charge time, etc. There's a whole story to it. I'm not gonna get into TF2 lore. But regardless, I feel like those are very cool, two very cool references. I'm also informed that the gun he uses, a customized shotgun M8, sorry, let me remind how to pronounce it, M1887, is customized and has the nickname Iron Curtain, which again is a reference to a Team Fortress 2 item. So the authors clearly did their research and they have a fairly fanboy attitude. I feel like you can call them that. Regardless, none of these changes are particularly bad. I found it a particularly creative writing and I hope they stick to this alternative of not making everything purely serious, as I feel like a bit of lighthearted comedy and references can always be a great addition even to the darkest sagas and etc. That's it for the main pickup, so now I'm gonna move on to the fears. First of all, it's obvious that Denigrate's boss is gonna be a further enemy. You don't just introduce a faceless voice talking to an assassin and then you expect your audience to forget it. It's pretty obvious. So I'm anxious to see how that turns out and I hope it turns out positively. Denigrate's introduction is a bit rookie. Rocky. Sorry. Apologies for the mispronunciation of the O. But her introduction is a bit rocky, but I feel like she does a fairly good job of being menacing and mysterious. Mike Hale's introduction is lacking, and I mean a lot, as we don't really get a very good context of him and yet to know his motivations, and I hope that they fix that because otherwise he will be just really a dead weight in the thing, and I don't want another just operator that has no clear goals or motivations. They both have really great potential, and the story as a whole, I hope it makes a great addition to this small franchise. I'm sorry if this is not the usual content that you see analyzing stuff on YouTube, and it's not my usual content either, but I like the idea of picking apart fan work, because in my opinion sometimes what's created by the fandom can be just as great as the original source material. So I hope that shedding some light on the story will get some attention to it, because honestly maybe this inspires an actual story for fully original characters to come out, which can make a career. So again, thanks for watching, thanks for sticking to this 10-minute overview and fairly simple breakdown of this entire chapter. I'm sorry that I don't have a lot of footage to put on screen, but as I said, it's a book and I'm not gonna just put me scrolling through the pages or having Angry Birds playing the background. Again, thanks for sticking and have a nice day, night, evening, or whatever time zone you live in.